Hello. Feels like a while since I've said that, but we are back, baby. Draft League time in Generation 9. Scarlet and Violet is here, and we're doing our first draft of the new generation. So, it's a little bit of a smaller one. This one is the OFC Scarlet Violet off-season. So they're doing a off-season for Generation 9 using only the Paldea decks. Any unreleased stuff or stuff that would be available on home is not out, so it's just the Paldea decks. And yeah, it's pretty exciting. The draft, we drafted in 2 pools of 15, and we only got to pick 8 Pokemon. So it was a little strange. Typically I haven't done well in drafts that have only included 8 Pokemon, but we'll see how we go. And then following draft, we have to play 4 matches in a pool of 5 people. And whoever the top 2 people are in said pool get to move on to playoffs. Because there's 30 people total, 6 pools. I'm not sure how playoffs exactly works yet, but I'm gonna go out on a limb and guess that since there's 12 people, the 4 highest results based on differential and score get to have a bye into the quarterfinals. And then the remaining 8 have to play out an extra playoff round. So that's my guess, but I don't know. We've actually got to get there first because top 2 out of 5 means we've pretty much got to go 3-1 to get there, guaranteed. So yeah, we can only afford 1 loss. So we'll see what happens. My team's a bit strange, so we'll see how we go. So, for the draft itself, you got to pick 1 tier 1, 1 tier 2, 1 tier 3, 1 tier 4, and 1 tier 5. So, okay, sorry about that. I'm confused by my OBS. So yeah, we got 1 of each tier. It's been a while since we've done a tier-based draft, but it kind of is, from what I've noticed, people try to do tier draft at the start of the generation rather than trying to go in depth in points, because it's kind of hard to say exactly where points would be. A bit harder when the new generations just come out, so I don't mind it. And then we got 3 free picks with 300 points. Now, if you remember back when we used to do tier drafts, it's kind of the same points rule as before. 180 points for a tier 1, 120 points for a tier 2, 100 points for a tier 3, 60 points for a tier 4, and 40 points for a tier 5. And you had to get all 3. So, the most common combinations were a tier 1 and 2 tier 4s, 2 tier 2s and a tier 4, or 3 tier 3s. So those were the main ones that you could kind of go for. So as for my strategy, I didn't know. I had a plan going in. The plan failed because why would things go well? And I don't think I evaluated the chaotic nature of this draft enough, because oh boy, did things kind of go south quicker than I expected. So, without further ado, let's go and talk about what we ended up getting. So, we were actually 3rd to pick in the draft, which is actually not bad at all. Especially because the Pokemon I ended up wanting was actually pretty high on a lot of people's radar. People were pretty excited to get this Pokemon. So, off the bat, because I knew it was most likely I was only going to take 1 tier 1, I kind of prefer the whole tier 2 approach. I was like, if I'm going to only get 1 tier 1, I want it to be impactful, I want it to be able to come to every game, I want it to have a good role, So that's what I was looking for, and one very much caught my eye. It's got a lot of offense. It's got a lot of utility. It can set hazards. It can remove hazards. It can do a lot of damage. You can tank it out. Great typing in ground. You know, it gets a lot of really nice coverage. That's right. We're talking about Landorus Varian. Oh right, this isn't released. Huh. Well, it's certainly not far off, in my opinion. And that is the Great Tusk. This went round 1, pick 1 in the other pool for drafting. And it's not hard to see why, especially when I just compared it to Landorus Varian. The only bad stat is the special defense stat, which you can bulk out, or you can just give an assault vest, and this thing is very strong. 131 attack is nothing to scoff at, with ground fighting stab and amazing coverage, with access to Ice Spinner, which is physical 80 power ice move, knockoff Megahorn, Play Rough. Oh, I forgot about terrestrialization. We should talk about the terrestrialization rule real quick, because Great Tusk will not be able to terrestrialize. The terrestrialization rule, it is only allowed for tier 3 Pokemon and below, and you have to choose 2 Pokemon on your team that are allowed to terrestrialize. They can go into any type, but only tier 3s and below. So Great Tusk can't terrestrialize, so we can't utilize that, but honestly, its type is already so good. Like, it's not the end of the world. So, yeah, so Great Tusk just does so much damage. It's got a decent speed tier. It's only 1 point below Excadrill, another very powerful ground type. So, yeah, that base 115 HP also makes it super tanky. And especially because the first pick of the draft was Goldengo, and this right now is the one that's running OU rampant for the most part, and Great Tusk is amazing into Goldengo, so we're pretty good into that, because Great Tusk is 1 point fast, or no, 3 points faster even, so yeah, so we've got that going for us. It can do a lot of damage. You can run, like, a very simple standard set. Why do you get Size Shock? What is... Alright. Very simple. You can just run Stealth Rock, Rapid Spin, the two things that I was very much looking for, because I knew removal was going to be limited because we're using Paldea decks and not using any transfer moves. The options to have Rapid Spin and Defog are a lot more limited, so I wanted to make sure I got one that I could easily bring to any game, and would be fine Rapid Spinning with. And then you can run Close Combat, Brick Break, or Body Press for a fighting move. If you don't want to lower your defenses, for example, you can use Brick Break or Body Press. And then EQ, or the new move, Headlong Rush, which is basically is ground type Close Combat. So you've got Close Combat on both stabs of 131 attack stat. Now it does have the Photosynthesis ability, not something I'm super thinking about, to be honest. But the booster energy obviously is a thing, so we'll see. As you all know, I am also a sucker for Rapid Spin speed boosts, which this can do. So you can also kind of do it with the booster energy as well, where you just bring it in, get a speed boost, and you can kind of go on a tear. So that's a thing as well. So we could be doing some sweeping with this, but it also can just be a bulky attacker. It can set rocks, it can Rapid Spin, it can do a lot of really, really nice things. So, Great Tusk is a Pokemon I can just see myself bringing into any game. I don't see a reason why I wouldn't bring it. And I say 87 speed isn't, like, bad. You gotta remember that, like, in regional dexes, speeds tend to be a bit lower. For example, that's why we're seeing, like, in VGC, like, Garchomp right now is like a premier speed tier. Like, speeds are a bit lower. And as a result... Sorry, taking a drink. I haven't done this in a while. As a result, 87 speed is not bad. It's 1 point faster than the Rotums, for example, and they're all legal. So, there are a couple bans, but we'll not mention them here as they become relevant, but some of the more powerful Pokemon were banned. Stuff that's been banned in singles already, and a couple others as well. So, Great Tusk, just a great Pokemon. Run it Assault Vest, run it offensively, run it defensively. It will still be an insanely good Pokemon, and I'm really happy to have it. I'm really excited to try out the Great Tusk. Next up, this was a Pokemon I knew I wanted. Because this Pokemon just it screamed out to me. It's something I love. Because it reminds me of another Pokemon that I also love. Q2, its amazing utility, and having just like so many things I just like having, especially in draft. And I just thought there's no world in which I'm not wanting this. And that is Cyclizar. Now, Shed Tail, its signature move, well, sort of signature move, I think Orthworm gets this as well, yeah, is banned. Understandably so. That move is broken. But Cyclizar isn't just good for Shed Tail. It has Regenerator, which obviously makes it crazy. But, Knockoff, U-Turn, Rapid Spin, and then a stab move of your choice. Does this maybe seem a little similar to a certain Tornadus that I like? Almost coincidentally, they are the same speed stat. So, yeah. I love Taunty. It's one of my favorite Pokemon to draft if I ever get the chance to. And Cyclizar is just like a little bit worse than Taunty. Not got the bulk or the offense that Taunty does. It's actually more physical than anything. But it can do all the things that Taunty kind of can. So I wanted it. That's why I took it so early. It was a tier 2 because Shed Tail was banned. It gets some decent coverage, but not the most it can realistically use. But Normal Dragon isn't bad. 95 attack, which can be boosted by Shift Gear, which, if this gets a Shift Gear off, nothing's outspeeding it. So you can kind of use it like a Dragon Dance, and then you can kind of go off with things like Double Edge and Dragon Claw, and maybe Knockoff, maybe, I don't know what else. It's mostly going to be a utility piece. It gets Taunt as well, so you can use it like really bulky and like as a pivot piece, like just max HP, max speed. But to be honest, you won't even need I'm not going to need max speed for the most part, because again, the drafts, the Pokemon aren't as fast. So just going like jolly, like drop down the speed to like here will probably be fine for the most part, and then it gives it some room to bulk it out a bit depending on what it needs. You can also just run AV, drop the because Rapid Spin is still an attacking move, it can just run AV quite easily. So yeah, this is a Pokemon I knew I wanted. I love pivoting, I love Regenerator, I love having Knockoff. A great Pokemon that I knew I wanted, and we'll see how it does. Kind of thinking more about it now, this probably would have been better in a draft with more Pokemon, because like the impact of each Pokemon in an 8 Pokemon draft probably should have been a bit higher, especially for a tier 2. But I kind of wasn't thinking about that when I drafted it, so and there's no transactions because it's supposed to be just a fun off-season thing, so there we go. But we'll see how Cyclizar does. I'm hoping for good things. And if not, I will still give it a try in the future, because I feel like it'll probably perform better when there are more Pokemon. So, to like kind of mess around with. Next up, by this point, I had already been sniped. Yeah. So I wanted Slowking, and it had gone. For very good reason. It went before I even could pick Cyclizar, so yeah, great bulky water type, and that's something I knew I wanted. I wanted a regen core with a bulky water type, because I felt like that paired with Cyclizar had really nice synergy, and kind of rounded out like a really solid core already. of like bulky Pokemon that could deal some damage. So I felt like I wanted Slowking, especially because it gets access to Chilly Reception, which switches itself out, gives it some pivoting. So both my Regenerator Mons can pivot out. So, but unfortunately it got taken before it got back to me. So I was like thinking, well, I could go like Toxapex, I could go Rotom Wash. Rotom Wash ended up actually getting taken. And I was like, well, this is unfortunate. Maybe I just have to kind of go with a different game plan. And then I thought about it, it's like, they could just go for Slowbro. It's still there. And I was like, well, what does Slowbro get over Slowking? Obviously, the defenses are switched. But what does it get over Slowking? And the answer is Body Press. That is the main thing it gets over Slowking. Despite that, it's still good. While it can't pivot out like Slowking can, Slowbro is still really good. The great typing, decent offense, good defenses, no access to Scald now, but that's fine because Surfs and Psychic still do really good damage. It gets great coverage options, just for no reason. Nasty Plot and Trick Room for no reason. You can use Chilling Water if you really want. No. But for the most part, this is a really nice defensive water type, and the main thing I wanted as well was something that could heal, because, like, Cyclizar can't heal itself outside of regen and rest, but Slowbro can. Slowbro can heal itself. That was something like Rotom Wash couldn't do. I was considering Toxapex, but I was like, Toxapex just feels low impact because it can't just Scald things and at least attempt to do something, whereas, like, Slowbro's 100 special attack stat with decent coverage can still do something. I have also in the past run something like this, where I've run like Surf, Psy-Shock, or Psy-Kick, whichever kind of matters. And then just like, actually I think I ran Fire Blast, and then, no, it doesn't get Thunder, and then just Ice Beam. I've run an Assault Vest, and just make it a bulky attacker. Very much something I've done in the past, and I could see myself doing it here if I need, like, kind of just a bulky special attacker. So, yeah, very much a possibility. So, yeah, Slowbro, great mon, love it a lot. Had some history with it, like actually playing OU with it. But yeah, it's a great Pokemon, so I'm really looking forward to using it. Just the regen core with Cyclizar and Slowbro, I felt like kind of gave me a solid baseline. So, this was a tier 2, so this kind of gave me, this like kind of dipped into the 3 points a bit to get, but still thought was worth it. Next up, a Pokemon that in hindsight I wish I hadn't picked, just that based on how the draft ended up going, but in the moment I thought this was the right call, and it's still a great Pokemon, don't get me wrong, but what I knew I wanted was, out of tier 3, I knew I wanted something that could benefit from Terrestrialization. I played in GSC Season 5, and we got to use Z moves there, and have Z captains, and I didn't really make the most use of that. So here I knew I wanted to make more use of that. And make sure that I had something that could utilize Terrestrialization, and basically just get a setup sweeper that I knew could just win games. And there were a couple that stuck out to me. One that I kind of wish I got instead, just based on how the draft went, was Poltegeist. Just because I feel like that was probably going to be a bit better. But the one I went for, because of how my plan ended up going, was still a good Pokemon regardless, and that is Mimikyu. So, Mimikyu's really good. It's kind of always been good, even after Disguise nerf back in Gen 8. Just because you still have, like, a free hit in you. The stats aren't something to write home about, but 96 speed isn't bad. Again, in a slower format, and with just the very much standard Swords Dance, Shadow Sneak, Play Rough, that's Protect, Play Rough +1, Shadow Claw, or just a coverage move, or just whatever. Mimikyu just can win games, and with the ability to Terastallize into either of those stabs or something else like a coverage move, or maybe just use Parablast, not really sure, but it has the option. It could go Bulk Up instead and just make use of that pretty reasonable Spadef stat and go for Drain Punch / Leech Life, I guess. It has options. It's mostly going to be a setup sweeper. It can play defensive, it's got Pain Split and Will-O-Wisp, and Ghost Fairy is a pretty decent typing. In fairness, it's only got 3 weaknesses to die of. Or 2, I think. I think it's only got 2. It's only weak to Steel and Ghost, so... yeah, and you can just Terastallize and kind of change those, so you can Terastallize into Pure Ghost and then you're no longer weak to Steel, or you can Terastallize into Fairy and then you're no longer weak to... No. Terastallize into Fairy doesn't... You're no longer weak to Ghost if you Terastallize into Fairy. So, yeah, you can kind of, like, play around with it, or you could just change it to something else entirely, and again, Swords Dance Life or Mimikyu can just win a game. So, yeah. I've seen people also run Assault Vest sets with this, just to have something bulky, so I could see that as well. But yeah, Mimikyu was something I was like, I want a offensive sweeper that can just win the game, and Mimikyu seemed like a great fit out of tier 3. It also gave me a Fairy type to kind of start building out my Fairy Dragon Steel Core, which we already had our Dragon, and now we've got our Mimikyu for our Fairy. So. That kind of, well, once we got back to me, I decided I knew I wanted my tier 4 now, and my tier 4 I wanted to grab because it felt really important to kind of give the teams already pretty decent defensive stuff, that last bit to round it out, and I knew it was going to be on people's radar because by this point it had already gone in the other battle pool, so, well, I mean, not the other draft pool, so, because I knew I wanted a Steel type, I knew I wanted, I knew I wanted a Steel type, and out of tier 4, like, there weren't going to be many good Steel types, so I knew I wanted to get something that I felt comfortable with, and as soon as I saw this in tier 4, I knew I wanted it regardless, and that is Orthworm. So, again, no Shed Tail, but that's fine. Orthworm has much more going for it than just Shed Tail. First of all, it's a pure Steel type with the signature ability Earth Eater, which just is Water Absorb for Ground type. So it already is only weak to 2 types, being Fire and Fighting. And I don't know if you noticed, but most fighting types are physical, and it's got 145 base defense. That's more than Skarm. So, the 85 attack isn't great, but it's enough to make use of Heavy Slam. I believe Steelix is around that, to be honest. So, like, Heavy Slam's pretty reasonable. Maybe Steelix is more. Steelix more? No, Steelix is 85 as well. So Steelix can utilize Earthquake and Heavy Slam. This one doesn't get Stab Earthquake, but it's at least immune to Earthquake, so... On top of that, you've got the amazing Body Press, which it does get Iron Defense, so you can Iron Defense Body Press it, and notably, it is a second Stealth Rocker, but also has access to Spikes. I knew I wanted a second Stealth Rocker because I didn't want to rely on Great Tusk as my only form of hazards, and Orthworm gives me options to run Stealth Rocks, or if Great Tusk is already running Stealth Rocks, we can go for Spikes, or just go for Spike stacking if I feel like that's more relevant. Again, just mostly on top of that, it can just like rest on up for healing, which is kind of the only downside. It doesn't have great healing. But you can go for a coiled setup if you actually want to hurt things with your Steel Stab, but otherwise you can just go for like, I mean, this is a pretty reasonable set, like just, where is it? That's Heavy Slam. I mean, Heavy Slam's fine as well. Iron Defense and Body Press. Iron Defense, Body Press +1. So, yeah. Orthworm, super solid Pokemon. Gives me that Steel type to kind of round things out. I was worried about ice, because kind of my first 2 picks were weak to ice. So we've got our Orthworm kind of help round out our defensive pieces, so now we can just pick some offensive pieces and round the draft down. And if you notice, kind of don't have a lot of special attackers, so we want to pick those up. And that's where things went wrong, because it turns out there's actually not that many great special attackers, and everyone kind of realized this when we got to the end of the draft. That a Pokemon I wanted really badly in Iron Jugulus got sniped 2 picks before me. This hurt, because I really kind of needed this, because I needed a good special breaker, and it turns out about like 4 other people needed something like this as well. So, yeah. So I kind of had to rethink a lot of things, and yeah, let's just say things haven't gone well since, but we kind of have scrapped together what we can from the rest. So, I still wanted a dark type regardless, because, like, still, like, the only resist I had was, what was I saying? The only resist to Psyche I had was Slowbro, and I have no Ghost resistant to... Well, I have Cyclizar, but Cyclizar's not the bulkiest thing on the planet, for Ghosts, and then, other than that, I have no way to stop Ghosts, so I knew I wanted a Dark type. But as you kind of know, I'm a bit picky on my Dark types, so I was like, well, what can I really grab at this point? And there was one that actually ended up sticking out to me, and I was like, you know what? Sure, I'll take it. It's not the best Pokemon, but I could see myself using it. I wanted something offensive out of Tier 4 for the most part anyway. So sure. We got Bombardier. Another brand new Pokemon. We got 4 new Pokemon at this point. 3 new Pokemon. No, yeah, 4. 4 new Pokemon. So Bombardier, Dark Flying type, with a very nice signature move in Rocky move in ability. Its offensive Pokemon stats are multiplied by 1.5 while using a Rock type move. And it's not a stat boost, as it's kind of implied. It's basically a stat move, but it basically gives it a choice band boost while using Rock type moves, in which it does get Stone Edge, Rock Slide, and Rock Blast. So you basically give this thing a choice band when using a Rock type move, which is crazy. Not the best special attacker, but you know, here we are. But with access to Brave Burst / Dual Wing Beat, and Knockoff, and Parting Shot / U-Turn, and Roost, which is something that even Iron Jugulus didn't get. So it can, with its okay bulk, kinda bulk out if it needs to. You know, it can Nasty Plot if it wants to. This Dark Flying type, actually has some pretty decent things going for it. Drill Run as well is not a bad move at all. And actually is my second Terra Captain. So my 2 Terra Captains are Mimikyu and Bombardier. I actually think Bombardier could do decently well. Again, it's not the fastest, but I could easily see myself just Choice Scarfing this thing, and just going for Choice Scarf knockoffs, Choice Scarf Parting Shots / U-turns. It can Stealth Rock, which is kinda cool. I don't see myself Stealth Rocking with this thing unless I go like, I guess I could go like a defensive set. It doesn't get Defog itself, but it can, Stealth Rock, use Boost, Taunt Knockoff. That seems pretty decent. So, you know, it's got things going for it. The stats are just a little bit lacking, but like, I just felt like this was probably going to be a better Pokemon overall, or at least one I felt like I was more likely to be able to use. Sucker Punch also great move to have. So yeah, I'm really excited to try this thing out. I actually feel like at first I was like, yeah, it's a Pokemon I'll pick and then probably never pick, and then as I've started building for some of the matches, I never realized this Pokemon's not bad, so we'll see how the Bombardier does, and I think this is a Pokemon that I could see myself drafting again, to be honest. It depends how things go with it in this draft, but I could see myself liking this, despite its kind of middling stats, so. Yeah, that kind of rounds out, that out, and now we have just a couple Pokemon left. So we've got a Tier 2 and a Tier 5 left to pick. And at this point, there were two types of Pokemon I knew I wanted. I knew I wanted a Fire type, and I knew I wanted an Electric type. I could have taken a Tier 4 Electric type in most likely Rotom Frost, but I decided to go for my my Electric type elsewhere, which ended up getting sniped, but here we are. So I knew I wanted to get my Fire type, and looking at Tier 2 and even Tier 3, there was only one that I was realistically going to be going for. It's a Pokemon I do really like. I just kind of wish I had it in a different context, where I wasn't just already down bad on special attackers. And it can go special, it's just much better at going physical. But it's still a Pokemon I really like, and that is Arcanine. Arcanine is so versatile, it's not even funny. Okay, I actually didn't look. It does get Morning Sun. Thank God. So, it can go defensive or offensive thanks to Morning Sun. Literally thanks to Morning Sun, because you can give it Will-O-Wisp and Morning Sun, and then just quick Flare Blitz E-Speed, and you have because of Intimidate, you have like a pretty solid defensive Pokemon. Or you can just go on the offense with it. Flare Blitz, Close Combat, E-Speed, Play Rough, Wild Charge. So it's got options. Arcanine is a Pokemon I do really like. Like I say, it can go special because it does have reasonable special attack stat, and just run like Fire Blast or Flamethrower. Especially on more defensive sets, I could see myself running like Flamethrower. Oh dear. But for the most part, Arcanine's kind of doing the same thing it's always done. It doesn't have Teleport anymore like it did back in Gen 8, but I think that's fine. Like, it's still a great Pokemon. I've said that in draft there's like 3 Pokemon that I like having, 3 Fire types, and this is even in national decks, that I would be always happy to draft. And those are Arcanine, Darmanitan, and Entei. The first 2 aren't in the game, so Arcanine it is. You can really make it super versatile. You can just slap a Choice Band on it. You can bulk it out and make it defensive. Arcanine's super versatile Pokemon, and I'm really happy to have it. Or at least I would be if I didn't already have a million physical attackers. So we'll see how things go with Arcanine. Regardless, I think it'll be a good boy. Our last Pokemon was supposed to be Raichu, but it got sniped. I wanted a bit more speed and special attack on my Electric type, but unfortunately we weren't able to get it. Instead, we kind of had to select there. We had to settle with a bit of a slower, more bulky, but much more powerful Electric type. And that is one I'm actually a little bit excited about. Maybe more than I should be to use. And that is Ampharos. So, Ampharos actually has pretty reasonable bulk. Bombardier doesn't really have the bulk because of the low 70 base HP stat, but Ampharos kind of gets there because of the base 90 HP stat. It's slow, but slow Volt Switches are not a bad thing to have, and pretty reasonable coverage. I was really tempted to Terra type this thing, or to make this a Terra Captain so I could use like Terra Ice or Terra Grass or something, but I wasn't sure how often I was going to be bringing it. This is our main special attacker of the team, so here we are. It can either play a bulky role, like a bulky offensive Pokemon. It can play a little bit defensive. It doesn't have healing, unfortunately, but it can play like... It's mostly just going to be a bulky special attacker that could go off on the on the speedy side because of agility, and 55 base speed with agility isn't bad. Like max speed without even a nature, with an agility, I'll put it at 418, which allows speed, like, it allows speed any non-Scarfer, for sure. I think if you go timid, then you can probably get Scarfers, because that, like, puts you at about, like, 445. So, like, that'll outspeed most Scarfers, because, like a Scarf base 110 Pokemon is 475, off the top of my head. Can't think of, like, was Scarf Rotom? Rotom hits 306 stat, so that's 409, no, 459. So it doesn't, it's not gonna outspeed most Scarfers then, but it'll outspeed pretty much everything else, like, no problem. And with decent coverage, it's got reasonable coverage. Unfortunately, its ice move of Ice Punch is kind of physical, so not great. But, you know, it's got dragon moves. Notably, it has Dazzling Gleam and Focus Blast, which is pretty reasonable, to be honest. Power Gem isn't bad either, to be honest. So, it's got options. But for the most part, if it is brought, it's going to be mostly to break water types, because, like, otherwise I've got nothing to break water types, which is why I want an electric type. I knew I could make, like, I knew I wasn't afraid of ground types, because, like, I have 2 immunities, so I knew I could take advantage of, like, having, like, picking up a fire and electric type at the end, and I also knew I wanted a fire type, just because I have 3 ice weeks in 8 Pokemon, so I knew I wanted Arcanine to help round that out. So, yeah. I can definitely see Ampharos coming. I don't know how often, but we'll have to see. So, that is the full 8 Pokemon. Great Tusk, Cyclizar, Slowbro, Mimikyu, Orthworm, Bombirdier, Arcanine, and Ampharos. The only Pokemon... Actually, I don't think there's a single Pokemon on this team I've used in a single draft league. So, I've at least used Slowbro in, you know, in singles generally, and I've used Arcanine in VGC. I think in VGC draft. But the rest, well, half of them are new Pokemon, so we're gonna see what happens. Maybe I'll like some of these Pokemon. Maybe I'll come out not liking some of them. I mean, 3 of them I went into this thinking I was gonna like, and then Bombirdier I will have to see. We'll see how I feel about Mimikyu. But I think for the most part, I don't think... I think I can't take... I don't think I'm allowed to take away negative opinions of any of these Pokemon, just because this draft was a bit chaotic. I'm allowed to take positive opinions away of these Pokemon, I think. Like, if I end up liking, like, Bombirdier way more than I thought, then absolutely. But I don't think it's fair to, like, pin anything negative down for these Pokemon specifically, just because, like, this team as a whole has 1 main special attack. So, we're gonna see how things go. By the time you're seeing this, the draft, the actual, like, league will be over and I'll be out, but, just because I want to conserve information, but then, like, once everything's over, then I'll be uploading everything, so. That will do it for the video. Thank you very much for watching. It's good to get back into things, and I will see you guys next time. Peace.